Did you hear?
Yeah, just sign up. Let somebody sign up with us. I don't care who I play with.
Looks like there's enough light.
Ah!
Tape on Bush.
Are you taping?
Yeah.
Are we going?
Yeah.
Okay. Where and when were you born? Grandma?
Okay, I was born in Jamestown, New York. When?
Yeah.
Oh, May 20th, 1928.
Wow.
Wow is right.
Grandpa, when and where were you born?
I was born in Erie, Pennsylvania in 1930.
Okay, how many siblings did you have?
I had, let's see, there was 8 of us.
Wow.
Eight
Eight.
brothers and sisters.
8 brothers and sisters.
And I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. I'm the oldest.
Where are you, Grandma?
I'm in the middle.
Like,
Hmm?
how in the middle?
How in the middle?
Like
Well,
5th?
let's see, well, I'm a twin, so we're
Oh,
like 4th and 5th.
okay. What was life like in your hometown when you were in elementary school?
Oh, wow. Cold. Cold. My hometown is Erie, Pennsylvania. It's not Jamestown, New York, because we moved there when I was small,
Yeah.
really small. And when I was going to school, we lived out in the country, and that was just regular old-fashioned country life. Nothing special, nothing big, just a bunch of kids. We had
Wow.
everybody to play with. We didn't, I remember my father built our house. We lived in a tent when we first went to Erie. That was fun. My mother liked it, no housework. But it was just like old-fashioned growing up, not like growing up time, not like it is now at all.
What
It was
about
fun.
in high school?
In high school, quiet, interesting, fun. It was nice country school, way out in the country. We rode the bus, walked part way and rode the bus the rest of the way. And it was fun.
What about now?
Now?
Yeah. How's
Now,
Erie?
what do you mean now?
Right now, how is Erie?
How is Erie? Oh, we haven't lived in Erie for about 30 years. I
Longer than that.
don't know what it's like.
We left
It's
Erie
kind
in
of like-
1956 and came down to Florida.
We visited up there and it hasn't changed a bit, so it's not changed much.
Okay, Grandpa, how is Erie? Your hometown is Erie, right?
Yes, yeah, I was born in Erie. I lived mainly most of my life on farms. I went to a one-room school, and we had 6 rows, and each row was a grade, and some rows only had maybe 1 student in it. We had we had an outside toilet. We didn't have all the facilities. We just took our own cup and we had it in school, and we drank out of that. And each week it was your turn to go out and pump the water and bring it in and put it in the thing. And we had to go out, and we had a pot-bellied stove up in the front of the school, and if you were bad and you didn't do good, you had to go to the back of the school because it was cooler back there, especially in the wintertime. And we had to carry in our own wood.
Oh,
It was very interesting.
okay. What was it like when you were in high school?
It was, well, I went to, then we moved in closer to town, and I went to a technical high school. I took up printing. And that was my trade for my life. I took up printing, and that's what I did most of my life. I was a printer.
And You don't know what it's like now?
No, because we haven't been up there, well, the school is no longer there. It is a long time been torn down. It was a real old school. It had old wooden steps in it, and it was a long time ago.
Okay. What events on a national or international level that occurred during your childhood stands out in your mind?
World War II.
World War II?
Yes, World War II.
And the death of Jack Kennedy. And Korean War. Mostly though.
Yeah,
Big
the
event.
death of FDR.
Yeah, Franklin.
And in August, when they dropped the first atomic
Yeah.
bomb, I would say that was one of the highlights.
And of course,
Did
the
you think
space
about it?
program, the walk on the moon,
Anything
Right.
good for you,
and all
Grandpa?
those things, yes.
Pardon?
Anything good? Like the walk on the moon?
Yeah, I like that. I enjoyed that a lot. And there was a lot of things that I watch a lot of sports and I like things like that. And I play, I play a lot of golf and I enjoy that. I belong to a very small country club here and we enjoy it very much.
Okay. Describe your childhood. What were some things your family did together and stuff like that?
Oh, goodness. Back then, that's all you had was your family. You did everything together. Lived out in the country and there was a whole bunch of us. And my father worked a lot, so you were at home. We didn't live very far from Lake Erie, so our main thing was when the summer come to hurry up and go swimming, but like you helped more at home. You did things. We had a big garden. We had to help keep care of the garden. We had to help with the housework, and then we had our homework. It's just different. It was different for us than it is for kids now, because kids now are all looking for things outside of the home to do, where back there that was your life, was your home. You did everything with your family. If your mom and dad went someplace, you went with them. And here it's mom and dad. Now it's mom and dad goes and the kids go with grandma or aunt or uncle or babysitter, and then the kids go, and it's just a lot different. Than family life is a lot different now than it was back then. And the kids, you played together, you played with your own family, because we didn't have that many neighbors, so you had to learn to get along with your brothers and sisters really fast. It was fun.
Grandpa, what was your childhood like?
Well, I was on a farm, and our closest neighbors was almost a mile away, so we didn't have anybody when we were young to play with. We played with, I played with my brothers and my sisters, but we were busy also working on the farm. I had to get up in the morning before I would go to school, and I'd have to milk the cows, and feed the hogs and take care of the chickens and all the other animals, because my dad worked in town and I was the oldest, so I did most of that. My younger brother, the one that's 2 years younger than me, he helped a lot. He and I used to have to go down in the spring of the year, and we'd go down in the pasture and cut the trees and let them lay. And then in the wintertime, when it was snowing, we would take the horse and a chain down into the pastures and down into the woods and snake the logs up to the house, and then we had to cut them up, and we used those as firewood. My mother had an old stove that was a wood-burning stove. We didn't have, when we first moved on the farm, we didn't have electricity, and we didn't have any facilities at all for as far as water goes and everything. All we had was a well. and you played quite a bit, but mainly you worked on the farm. That was your job, taking care of the farm and to make sure that all the animals were all right.
What line of work were your parents in?
Well, my mother was a housewife. 8 kids, come on. My dad, he worked for the General Electric. Back then it was just at the end of the Depression. And it depended on how many children you had, whether you had a job or not. And so, of course, we had big families, so he stayed there, but they had to work awful hard. He used to make the boxes for the refrigerators that they come in, the crates. And I remember, and of course no air conditioning or nothing. And I can remember in the summertime he'd come home and he'd be so scalded from perspiring under his arms and everything from hammering the crate shut. But he was just lucky to have a job, you know. But he worked for GE, he retired for them. And my mom, she just took care of the kids and did the house.
Yeah. What about your grandparents?
My mother's mother died when she was real small, and my father's family was kind of all mixed up. I remember they said it was my grandmother, but she was my step-grandmother. And when I was really small, it seemed like she was pretty old. And we didn't see too much of them because they lived quite a ways from us. They would come by once in a while, but we didn't see very much of them. And I can't even, my real grandfathers, I don't know what either of them ever did, you know, for a living or anything. We just weren't in contact with your relatives like you are now, you know. Just don't know your relatives. When I don't know my relatives as well as the kids nowadays know their grandmothers and everything, because you have all the communication stuff, you know. You have your computers. You can email your grandma or your great-grandmother or whoever, you know, and then people didn't live as long back then, so your grandmothers died before you were almost time to be married. You know, you just didn't have grandmothers and grandfathers unless you were lucky.
Your parents, what were they?
Oh, my father, when we were on the farm, things got bad, and so he went to work on the railroad. He started out as a fireman, then he went to engineer, and that's why we stayed at home, because my brother and I, the other kids were too small, so we did most of all of the farm work, you know, and going to school. And for me to go to high school when I first started into high school in the 9th grade, it was back then, we had 19 miles to go to school on a school bus, one way, because we were out in the country and everything was far away. You didn't get to see your grandparents or your aunts and your uncles very, very often, because we were so far away from everything. You did see them. My grandfather, he died, oh boy, I don't know. I guess maybe I was about 15 or 16 years old when he died. My grandmother, my dad's mother, she died in a nursing home in the city of Erie, and I think she was about 90 years old when she died. She was in there for many years, and all of my aunts and uncles, never seen too many of them. We knew them, but we never saw them that much because we weren't that close to anybody. Everything was so far away. And that time you didn't have the transportation like you have now.
Sorry, we had technical difficulties. We're getting back to the interview.
Okay. Now we're on to
We left off on
Your
you didn't
high
have
school.
transportation.
the high school. Okay. What describe your high school, like what did it look like?
Our high school, no, it was,
You both went to the same high school?
it was, no. Our high school was fairly new, out in the country. We changed rooms, but not anything like they do today. We might have had maybe 4 changes, you know, and it was really, really simple, no problem. They had a small football field. Other than that, there were nothing big, because you just went and you learned your things. They had a big study hall, and the cafeteria, the lunch, call it cafeteria, it's their lunch place now. They had just started it, so you really couldn't get a lunch. Everybody brought their lunches to school. And other than that, you just had your main subjects, your math and art. You had your electives that you could take in your basics. And
Which was your favorite?
which
class?
was my favorite? Oh, I liked them all.
Mm.
I loved school, I really did. Had a lot of fun studying, and I think I liked Latin the best, because I took 3 years of it. Don't ask me anything in it now, Sean, I couldn't tell you much. But at the time, it was a lot of fun.
About how many kids were there?
In our school, maybe, oh my gosh, I doubt it, maybe 150. If there was that many, yeah, probably.
Do you have a most memorable teacher?
Do I have one? No, I can't remember anybody
So long.
really special. It's been a long time ago, you know. I remember an art teacher, Mr. Wellman. He was very nice. The teacher I remember most was Mrs. McDonald. The kids all used to make terrible fun of her. They would do things just to irritate her because she did get upset. And she'd get so upset she'd cry. Poor teacher. And then a bunch of us got together and went up and apologized to her. So after that, they didn't teach her so badly because she was a good teacher. It's just that the kids knew they could egg her, and they did. But other than that, as far as high school goes, you know, the teachers were all good, and they were good teachers because the kids all got good grades and they appreciated them. And I don't remember any of them being a teacher where all the kids didn't like or anything. I think the teachers back then were more dedicated to teaching the kids the basics and what they should know, rather than now seeing, oh, I don't know. It's just now it seems like they're too busy with other things, the teachers are. They're too busy with other things rather than, maybe it's just the system of getting right down and teaching the basic things of what you should know. And we just had a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Hey, Grandpa. What was your high school?
Well, it was fun. When I went to high school, there was only maybe a little over 100 kids in high school, because back then they had the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade.
That's what they have now.
Like, I guess they have that now, but there was only maybe 100 kids. I went out for basketball and played basketball, but we didn't have that big of a team because there wasn't that many kids in the school, and we weren't that good. We used to go play the other high schools, and then when it's like I was saying, as soon as I got done with all of that, I had to get back home because my father was gone out working on the railroad, and he was on the road, and sometimes he'd be gone for 2 or 3 days, so I would have to get home to do the chores at home. That was their job. I really can't remember any of the teachers. I can't remember their names, but I enjoyed history. I really did like history. And, it was a lot of fun because it was small and you got to know all the kids. It's not like nowadays you go to high school, from what I understand, they got 1,000 or 1,500 kids in school, you don't even know anybody. But back in those days, you knew just about all the kids that were in school with you.
Wow.
It was very, very interesting. Then when I moved into we moved into the city, and well, no, we didn't move into the city. I was still out in the country, and I had to go. I went into what they call a technical school, Erie Technical High. It's no longer there, and I took printing there, and I enjoyed that very much. It was downtown in Erie, of course. Back in those days, Erie was very, very small. It's still not. I think right now it's the 3rd largest city in Pennsylvania, but still it's not a very big city. It was right on the lake, and I met a lot of nice kids there, and I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Okay. What kind of activities were you involved in while in high school?
Played basketball,
You did?
yes.
That's
Yes.
a little story.
Yeah, I played
Trouble
basketball.
is, I played basketball, but wherever the schools that we played, why, I always had to walk to get there because my father worked 3 to 11 and no buses took you anywhere. If you
Yes,
didn't
you
have a
walked.
ride, you walked. I can remember one time walking to play a basketball game and had to walk like 3 miles, and by the time I got there, my legs were so sore I kept cramping up. I couldn't play basketball. But it was fun. Did a lot of art. Loved art class. Did a lot of paintings and art at home. And but they didn't do all that many things in school that they do now. And they did have the cheerleadings, but I never went out for it. And just they had the basketball, and I went out for that. And like I said, I love my Latin and the art.
Did you have anything that you did like outside of school, like after school?
Like, you mean like activities, things to do from school activities?
Like outside
No,
school?
just, well, it's,
Community related?
Back then, you kind of
no
stayed.
community things.
No.
No, you did it with your family or your close neighbors or
Yeah.
maybe a real good friend. They had their ice skating in the winter. You're swimming in the lake in the summer. And, just the things that you had to do. And that was it. Most of the kids had a lot of work to do when they were young. Maybe that's why kids when we were younger didn't get in as much trouble as they do now, because you were kept busy doing things. You didn't have time to sit around and think about how boring life was, because I'm telling you, life was not boring. You had a lot of things that you had to do to help keep your family, because they didn't have the money back then. It was post-Depression days. And I know everybody says a loaf of bread was 5 cents, but boy, oh boy, to get that nickel was really hard. and I read a lot. But it's, as far as big activities like they have out nowadays where that you do, they just didn't have them then. You just had to, and if they did have them, you couldn't do them because you had so much to do of your own things, at home and with the family and that thing. Usually, if you had a car, if your family had a car, you were lucky. And usually the car was gone because Dad had it at work. So there wasn't as much, not as much at all.
Grandpa, what did you do?
Well, mainly, there wasn't a lot of things you could do because we were so far away, but we found little games that we'd play around the house, that we didn't go to the neighbors because it was, it was too far away, but we had a lot of fun. And at that time, my dad had an old 1936, I think it was, a pickup truck. And he used to take the kids and he'd take us into town. And we thought that was maybe every 6 weeks or every 2 months you would get into town and you would get a bottle of what they didn't have cans then, they call a bottle of pop. And that was the greatest thing in the world. You got a bottle of pop for a nickel. And we used to go to this place with, it was in Perry Square in Erie. And it was like a town center, but it's very small. And they had a place there that made hot dogs. They made Greek hot dogs. And they were excellent. And we thought that was the greatest thing in the world. My dad used to go in and get a bag of hot dogs. Or he'd get 6 hot dogs for a quarter. And we didn't get hot dogs at home. We made all our own stuff. About the only thing my mother bought was flour and sugar and salt. And the rest of the stuff we got off on the farm, so that was a big treat for us. We didn't get to go into town that often. I do remember when World War II ended, we went into town and that was the biggest thing. I never saw so many cars and trucks and stuff. It was like a big event, when it ended. And other than that, we just did our things around home. We didn't have anybody else to go play with.
Okay. What events would you say were the ones that were defining moments during your teenage years?
That was what, John?
That were your defining moments during your teenage years?
Like what do you mean?
Like going to war, car accident, meeting grandpa.
Outstanding.
No?
Well, when I met your mother,
There's another?
I mean,
Yeah, right.
I was working at the hospital, driving ambulance, and being an orderly for something to do. And back in those days, it's not like now where you have EMS. All the hospitals had an ambulance. And if there was a wreck or anything happened, you went out on the ambulance and assisted the people. And when you went out on the ambulance back in those days, you had what they call in the hospitals an intern doctor. And one always went with you. You had an orderly go out, and you had sometimes I would go out as the orderly, sometimes I would go out as a driver. And I did that part-time. And that's where I met your grandmother. That was a long time ago. We'll soon be married 53 years this coming May.
Wow. How did you two meet?
She chased
Okay,
me.
I was the, yeah, right. I was a student nurse. And we met at the hospital. I was working on one of the floors, and he was doing the orderly, and he'd come up on the floor, and that's how we met.
Okay. What profession have you been in your adult years? You were a nurse.
Pardon me?
You were a nurse. And
Yeah.
did you always want to be a nurse?
No, I wanted to be a school teacher. I wanted to be a school teacher, but my twin wanted to be a nurse. And back then, they didn't separate you in school, so you were always together, so we were never apart from each other. And she said she was going to be a nurse, and I said, let's go be a school teacher. I want to be a school teacher. She wouldn't go be a school teacher, so I wanted to be a nurse.